What is going on, y'all? So this video, I'm just gonna briefly discuss this Facebook status, basically paraphrasing the Facebook status. The conversation is basically going around things that many of our mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers, women, women from older generations, a lot of what they endured in their relationships, women of today are not putting up with that. And I'm going to take it further because you know me, regardless of your gender, a lot of the stuff that people were putting up with 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, people are not putting up with in today's day and age in 2023. Now, are there still people out here who unfortunately find themselves in toxic, dysfunctional, abusive relationships? Yes. But as time goes on, you're seeing more and more people, especially women, say, hell no, I'm not dealing with somebody who's a liar, a cheater, no emotional intelligence, not emotionally available, no emotional maturity, cheating, abusive, toxic, narcissistic, and just downright a basket case of problems. You know, when you look at back in the day, especially pertaining to women, it wasn't until the early to mid 70s when women were able to open up banking accounts, checking accounts, and get credit in their name. So we're literally talking about the last 50 years or so of women being able to have that right. And as you quickly seen from the early to mid 70s to now, right? So let's say it was 1970. So over the past 53 years, right, we have seen women become a lot more independent, secure in their own right. And because of that, they have a lot more options on the type of people, especially if they're dating men, the type of men that they're going to deal with. You know what I'm saying? Because when you look back in the day, women didn't really have rights and arguably are still fighting for rights to this day. So back in the day, you couldn't have a bank account. So you had to be tied to a man in order to have financials. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, that led to a lot of women in particular being abused. I mean, when you listen to the stories that a lot of our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers and aunts and great-aunts and older siblings and what have you went through with their cis male partners, unfortunately, a lot of our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers and great-uncles and, you know, older male siblings and family members, let's just keep it real. They were very abusive and toxic. There's no other way to put it. You had women having their faces beat in. I mean, literally, there is a whole, basically, it's a tank top. You know, that's exactly what it is. But they call it a wife beater. And why did they call it a wife beater? Again, because that was the culture that we were living in. You know, and unfortunately, those things still happen. You know, women are still, unfortunately, being beaten, disrespected, cheated on, lied to, sexually abused, physically abused, financially abused, mentally abused, you name it. But when you look 50 plus years ago, just in that 5-year decade, listen, okay? People were getting beat. People were being murdered by their husbands. You had men who would have 5, 6, 7 different kids outside of the marriage. I mean, there's so many situations where a man, you know, say a grandfather or a great-grandfather has passed away, and literally at the funeral, you'll see all of these random people here, and come to find out, those were his other kids from the other women that he was cheating on your grandmother or great-grandmother with. So fast forward to 2023, women have a lot more freedom, rights, and options, and they're not putting up with toxic, dysfunctional cis men. It is what it is. But again, you know how I am. People in general are starting to realize I can do bad by myself. I don't need to be in partnership with someone who's disrespectful, who doesn't respect me, who's lying, who's cheating, who's condescending, who's secretly jealous, or in many, and you know I'm about to go there, and in some cases, on the down low, lying about their sexuality and using you as a beard to make themselves appear to be heterosexual, knowing that they don't even like women. Let's just keep it real. Okay, or vice versa, knowing that they don't even like men. Let's just keep it real. Okay? Dealing with someone who is verbally abusive, name calling, disrespecting you, calling you everything but a child of God. You know, everything under the sun negative, they're calling you that. Chastising you, isolating you from your friends and family. Because again, a lot of these types, especially when we look at it is what it is, cis men, this is how so many, unfortunately, especially back in the day, operated. Like literally would isolate women from their families and friends, because obviously when you don't have a support group, who are you going to be leaning on for support? Your abuser. And nowadays, not to say that this is not still happening, because like I said earlier, unfortunately, some things, it takes a long time for it to die out. And you still have women, men, people who are being abused in their relationships. It is unfortunately happening still. However, in comparison, things have changed. And I'm thankful that things have changed. I'm just gonna go on and say it. In this day and age, guess what? You actually have to be a decent human being. No one's gonna be with you just because you're a man. And I think a lot of cis men are gonna have a hard time with that, because again, you've been allowed to be mediocre and basically do the bare minimum for centuries. And now people are holding you accountable. You know, back in the day, women had to depend on you because they didn't have rights. And that's another reason why so many of you are misogynistic and sexist, because it benefits you to be misogynistic and sexist. Because if she doesn't have rights, you get to trample all over her and treat her like a piece of meat. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers and uncles and great-uncles, and it is what it is. That's what they were doing. Okay? Domestic violence was basically a part of was the norm essentially back in the day. And that's sad. And unfortunately, like I said, domestic violence is still occurring at alarming rates still. And it needs to be addressed and it needs to stop. But again, and then also keep in mind, men can also be survivors and victims of domestic violence, of sexual assault, of physical assault, of financial abuse, of mental abuse, of emotional abuse, okay? So, like I always say, people, but for real, and it's like, you have to be a decent human being. You can't come in here thinking that somebody is going to put up with someone who's constantly inconsistent, never able to put forth an effort, never can show reciprocation. You can't be surprised when people fall back or completely leave and disregard you if that's how you're acting. And for a lot of people, it's going to be difficult for you to find partners. And notice I said partners, as in plural, with an S, because again, everyone's not monogamous. So you have people who are non-monogamous, who are polyamorous, who have open relationships, who are very fluid in their relationships, and vice versa. So if you're still, and I'm gonna say it, especially for my men, if you're still operating from a place of toxic masculinity, you're the one that's gonna likely have a difficult time finding a suitable mate. Because you're not a suitable mate. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. Communication skills have to be there. You know, this doing silent treatments because you didn't get your way, or because this is how you deal with things because you grew up in a household, And while our trauma definitely plays a role, I'm sorry, but as we get older, and I'm guilty of this too, that's why I'm saying it to myself as well. As we get older, you can't keep using your childhood trauma for why you are acting ridiculous today at your very big age. So a lot of that, because a lot of dudes, we got to be real. We'll sit up here, shut down, not communicate, do silent treatments, and it's very passive aggressive. Well, I'm here to tell you, in this day and age, you will be left. Okay, because no one's going to wait around trying to figure out why a grown man or grown woman or grown person can't communicate because they didn't get their way. Because at this point, you look stupid and immature. And it just needs to be said because it is. It's emotionally manipulative, it's emotionally passive aggressive, and it's emotionally immature. Healthy adults don't do silent treatments. It is what it is. So it's little things like that where a lot of you are going to be barred and pretty much discarded because no one's putting up with that. You know what I'm saying? Another thing, if you don't know how to reciprocate, good luck. No one's going to be constantly pouring in your cup and you never can pour back into their cup. It is what it is. If you're expecting your partner, right, or partners to basically be your end all be all, aka they're the therapist, the counselor, the chef, the cook, the taxi driver, the person you're having sex with, you know, you come to them, you know, for financial support, for sexual love and reciprocation and blah, blah. You expect them to do everything, but you can't reciprocate any of that. You're probably going to be alone. Okay? Because a lot of people are not interested in these one-sided relationships from hell that have been the norm for so long. Because again, for particular demographics, women, they didn't have any rights at the time and they had to put up with bullshit. Now, they're better off single. And they truly are. You know what I mean? And I'm also going to say this. For men who are healthy, who hold themselves accountable, who are respectful, and who got their shit together, you're better off alone too. Because again, who wants to deal with somebody that is just going to be a burden? It's just going to be bringing nothing but pain, frustration, confusion, unwanted diseases, unwanted pregnancies. Let's just keep it real. Who wants to deal with that? And now that people are stepping into their truths, they're honoring their boundaries, they're honoring themselves, they're healing from childhood trauma and toxicity, they're unlearning toxic behaviors and ideologies, people are done. This really is the age of Aquarius. Things are changing. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to be left behind. And for good reason. Because why would we want you, if you are any of the negative things that I'm talking about, why would we want you coming with us into the future? No, you can stay back in the 21st century, where, you know, in the 20th century, where everybody was just, you can have that. Not coming with me. So, and you see a lot of people complain, and the main people complaining are cis men. And I mean, it makes sense because now you actually have to bring something to the table besides sex and money. Because let's be honest, that's typically where men fail, is because we're still operating from toxic masculinity, from patriarchy, from misogyny, from sexism. We're still sitting up here basing our worth on sex and how much money we can make. And what you don't realize is, yes, there are women out here who also perpetuate toxic masculinity, misogyny, sexism, okay, and patriarchy. I'm not saying that there aren't, because there are plenty of women who unfortunately not only perpetuate it, but they're also following in it. Let's just be real. But being real, you got to realize, especially if you are a man that likes women, right? You know, you're bi, you're heterosexual, whatever it may be. Women have their own money. Women, in many cases, are making more money than the men. So if you think that you bringing money to the table is going to be enough for her to overlook the fact that you don't know how to communicate, that you're cheating on her, that you're manipulating her, that you're abusive and you never want her to hang out with her friends or be with her family, you're in for a very brutal awakening, because she don't got to deal with you. She's got her own bag. I mean, case in point, Keke Palmer is a prime example of she had her own bag. She was controlling the show since 2006. Okay, Aquila and the Bee. Okay, so they can easily leave and exit. They don't have to put up with you and your mediocrity. Okay, and it's the same thing with women. I'm just gonna go on and say it. If you are sitting up here still, and we all have to work on ourselves. I'm still working on me, but it needs to be said. If you're still sitting up here bashing and talking about niggas ain't this, niggas ain't that, and I ain't got time, and I got an attitude, and blah, 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 blah. Yes, free will, do you. However, don't be surprised if he walks away, or she walks away, or they walk away. Because again, people across the board are really starting to realize life is too short to be putting up with people who are toxic, dysfunctional, and abusive. And a lot of folks need to do the self-reflection and look inside. Because it's not okay to continue to do the same thing over and over and then wonder why your ass is never chosen, or why you're always alone, or why all of your relationships fail. Because somewhere down the road, it's called look in the mirror. And a lot of us need to start looking in the mirror. I've been looking in the mirror for the past 5 years, and let me tell you, it's been brutal. It's been hard. Because when you finally are accountable to yourself, you start becoming sick of your own bull. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people aren't really, I'm not gonna say a lot of people, but some people are not willing to do that. They're comfortable being the victim. They're comfortable in this, being in their trauma. They don't wanna learn. They don't wanna move on. They don't wanna get better. They don't wanna do right. They don't wanna be a better person for themselves, let alone other people that are in their lives. And unfortunately, those are the types of people that you have to leave behind.